before guns, before missiles, before any of the technology we take for granted today, mankind was already engineering instruments of absolute terrifying destruction. These weren't just weapons. These were tools of domination so ruthless, so unstoppable, so horrifyingly effective that entire civilizations were erased from the map because of them. And some of them, history deliberately tried to bury them, because the world wasn't ready to remember just how deadly our ancestors truly were. In this video, we're counting down 10 of the most brutal, ingenious, and downright terrifying ancient weapons ever created. Weapons that changed the course of wars, toppled empires, and left historians questioning everything they thought they knew about early human civilization. These are the weapons that warriors feared above all others, the ones that gave their wielders an almost supernatural edge on the battlefield, and trust me, some of these will completely change how you think about ancient warfare. From liquid fire that couldn't be extinguished, to war machines that sound more like science fiction than ancient history, this list is unlike anything you've seen before. Before we dive in, if you're into military history, ancient warfare, and the weapons that shape the world, hit that subscribe button right now and ring the notification bell, because we release content like this every single week and you do not want to miss what's coming next. Alright, let's go back to the deadliest chapters in human history.
Kicking off our list at number 10, we have one of the most brilliantly engineered throwing weapons in all of ancient history, the Roman Pilum. To the untrained eye, the Pilum looks like a simple spear, but make no mistake, this weapon was a masterpiece of military engineering, and it gave the Roman legions a decisive, devastating advantage in close-quarters battle that their enemies simply had no answer for. The Pilum was a heavy javelin, roughly 6 to 7 feet long, featuring a long iron shank attached to a wooden shaft. But here's what made it truly diabolical. That iron shank was intentionally designed to bend on impact. The moment a Pilum struck an enemy shield, the soft iron neck would buckle and warp, making it virtually impossible to pull out or throw back. Suddenly, your shield weighs an extra 10 pounds, it's dragging on the ground, and you're completely exposed. Roman soldiers would launch a coordinated volley of pilums just seconds before charging, turning enemy front lines into a stumbling, shield-dropping chaos before a single sword was even drawn. Known for its ability to neutralize an opponent's defenses before the fight even truly began, the Pilum was a key asset in Rome's conquest of Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. Simple in concept, catastrophic in execution. A worthy start to this list. Coming in at number 9, we have a weapon so far ahead of its time that military historians still struggle to fully appreciate just how revolutionary it was. The Chu-Ko-Nu, China's legendary repeating crossbow. While European armies were still fumbling with single-shot crossbows that took up to a minute to reload, Chinese warriors in the Warring States period, as far back as 400 BC, were carrying a weapon capable of firing 10 bolts in 15 seconds. Let that sink in for a moment. The Chu-Ko-Nu featured a rectangular magazine mounted on top of the crossbow, holding 10 bolts at a time. A simple lever mechanism, operated with one hand, both cocked the bowstring and loaded the next bolt in a single fluid motion. No separate loading step, no pause. Just continuous, relentless fire. Equipped with a firing rate that was unmatched anywhere in the ancient world, the Chu-Ko-Nu was deployed en masse by Chinese armies to create walls of projectiles that made organized infantry charges almost suicidal. While the individual bolts weren't always powerful enough to penetrate heavy armor, they were frequently dipped in poison, turning every scratch into a potential death sentence, making it a formidable weapon of both psychological and physical destruction. The Chu-Ko-Nu remained in active military use in China all the way into the 19th century. 1,500 years of continuous military service. That is a record almost nothing else on this list can match.
Next up at number 8, we have the weapon that literally built one of the greatest empires the ancient world had ever seen, the Sarissa, the devastating long pike of the Macedonian phalanx. When Alexander the Great's father, King Philip II of Macedon, introduced the Sarissa to his armies in the 4th century BC, he didn't just upgrade his military, he completely broke the rules of ancient warfare. The Sarissa was an infantry pike measuring between 15 and 21 feet in length, nearly twice as long as any spear used by contemporary Greek or Persian armies. When a Macedonian phalanx locked into formation, the soldiers of the first 5 ranks all leveled their sarissas forward simultaneously, creating an impenetrable wall of overlapping iron spear tips that stretched out more than 10 feet in front of the front line. Known for its ability to keep enemies at a lethal distance before they could ever reach a Macedonian soldier's body, the Sarissa armed phalanx was essentially an ancient killing machine, Cavalry couldn't charge it. Infantry couldn't reach the men holding it. Archers struggled to penetrate the overlapping shields. Equipped with a bronze counterweight spike on the rear end, which could be driven into the ground for stability, or used as a secondary weapon if the main tip broke. The Sarissa was engineered for one purpose and one purpose only: total, systematic annihilation of whatever stood in front of it. It was the weapon behind Alexander's conquest of Persia, Egypt, and the edges of India, and history almost forgot to give it the credit it deserves. Coming in at number 7, we have a weapon so bizarre, so visually terrifying, and so lethally effective that it sounds more like mythology than military history: the Feng Ho Lun, or wind and fire wheels, used by Chinese warriors and famously depicted in ancient texts and folklore. The wind and fire wheels were essentially circular metal hoops, worn on the feet or hands, embedded with spinning blades and sometimes set ablaze with burning oil. Warriors trained to move with these weapons became spinning, flaming instruments of absolute chaos on the battlefield. Beyond their theatrical impact, these weapons served a very real military function. The spinning blades created an unpredictable, constantly moving cutting surface that was extraordinarily difficult to block with a conventional sword or shield. The fire added a psychological dimension that few ancient warriors had the mental fortitude to stand against, because there is something deeply primal about a human being running at you, completely engulfed in controlled flame, making no effort whatsoever to stop, making it a formidable weapon of psychological warfare as much as physical combat. The wind and fire wheels were used in ambush scenarios and in the chaos of close melee battles where traditional weapon discipline broke down. They never achieved widespread military adoption, but in the hands of a trained specialist, they were an ancient weapon with absolutely no conventional counter. At number 6, we have Rome making another appearance on this list, because when it came to engineering weapons of war, the Romans simply could not stop innovating. This time, it's the Scorpio, the Roman army's terrifyingly accurate field artillery crossbow. The Scorpio was a torsion-powered bolt thrower, essentially a massive, precision-engineered crossbow mounted on a tripod or wheeled carriage, operated by 2 soldiers. Using twisted sinew or rope bundles for power instead of a traditional bow limb, the Scorpio could hurl a 2-foot iron bolt with enough force to punch clean through shields, armor, and the men wearing them, at ranges of up to 400 meters. What set the Scorpio apart from other ancient siege weapons was its extraordinary accuracy. Roman military writers recorded instances of Scorpio crews picking off individual enemy commanders on fortress walls from distances that would be impressive for a modern rifle shooter. Julius Caesar himself referenced the devastating effect of massed Scorpio fire in his accounts of the Gallic Wars. Equipped with a sophisticated aiming mechanism that allowed for precise elevation and horizontal adjustment, the Scorpio was deployed not just in sieges, but in open field battles, where its terrifying accuracy created a psychological effect that went far beyond its actual kill count. Knowing that an enemy weapon could single you out and kill you personally from 400 meters away in the middle of a battlefield, that kind of fear changes how an army fights. A key asset in Rome's military dominance for nearly 5 centuries, the Scorpio was ancient precision weaponry at its absolute finest. Halfway up the list at number 5, we have one of the most iconic and ferocious close combat weapons of the ancient Middle East, the Khopesh, the curved sickle sword of ancient Egypt. The Khopesh is immediately recognizable by its distinctive shape, a bronze or iron blade with a straight handle that curves dramatically outward into a hooked, sickle-like cutting edge. But this weapon was far more than just an exotic-looking sword. It was a purpose-built instrument of brutal, close-quarters devastation that gave Egyptian warriors a decisive edge over enemies armed with straight-bladed weapons. The hook on the Khopesh wasn't decorative. It was functional in multiple deadly ways. It could slash in a wide arc that conventional shields struggled to block. It could hook around the edge of an enemy's shield to pull it aside and expose the body behind it. And in close grappling situations, it could be used to trap an opponent's weapon arm and create an opening for a killing strike. Known for its versatility in combat and its ability to defeat both armored and unarmored opponents, the Khopesh was the weapon of Egyptian pharaohs and elite warriors, depicted in temple carvings and royal tombs across thousands of years of Egyptian history. Ramesses II himself was famously depicted wielding a Khopesh at the Battle of Kadesh, one of the largest chariot battles in recorded history, making it a formidable symbol of both military power and royal authority. The Khopesh remained the dominant close combat weapon of the ancient Middle East for over 1,000 years. Few weapons in human history have combined elegance and lethality so completely. Coming in at number 4, we have the ancient world's closest equivalent to a modern artillery cannon, the Ballista, the massive torsion-powered bolt and stone thrower that helped armies crack open fortified cities like they were made of paper. Originally developed by the ancient Greeks and perfected by Roman military engineers, the Ballista was a large-frame torsion artillery piece capable of hurling either large iron bolts or heavy stone projectiles with devastating force and, crucially, with remarkable accuracy for a weapon of its size and era. The largest ballistas fielded by Roman legions could launch a 15-pound stone projectile over 500 meters with enough kinetic force to demolish sections of fortified walls, collapse wooden gate structures, and send fragments of stone and wood tearing through dense formations of troops behind the walls like ancient shrapnel. Equipped with a sophisticated winch and ratchet tensioning system that allowed crews to precisely calibrate the power of each shot, the ballista was used in both offensive siege operations and as a defensive weapon mounted on city walls and warships. Roman naval ballistas could disable enemy ships by targeting their oarsmen and deck crews from distances that kept the Roman vessels safely out of arrow range. A key asset in virtually every major military campaign from Alexander the Great through the height of the Roman Empire, the ballista represented the absolute pinnacle of ancient mechanical engineering applied to the science of killing. History remembers the gladiators and the legions, but it was weapons like the ballista that truly decided the outcomes of ancient wars. At number 3, we have a weapon so unusual, so savage in its design, and so horrifying in its application that most mainstream military history books refuse to give it more than a passing footnote. The Zhua, the iron claw weapon of ancient China. The Zhua was essentially a long pole, sometimes up to 6 feet in length, topped with a cast iron claw resembling a human hand with curled razor-sharp talons. It sounds almost theatrical. It was anything but. In battle, a warrior armed with a Zhua could use the weapon's hooked claw to grab an armored opponent's helmet or body armor and physically drag them off their feet, exposing them to follow-up strikes from allied soldiers, or simply holding them in place while the Zhua itself delivered a crushing blow. Against cavalry, the Zhua was particularly devastating. It could catch a mounted warrior and pull them violently from their horse, where they were essentially helpless against infantry. Known for its ability to defeat opponents, regardless of how heavily armored they were, because you cannot armor against being grabbed and thrown to the ground, the Zhua created a category of close combat engagement that conventional swords and spears simply weren't designed to handle, making it a formidable and deeply feared weapon in the hands of trained Chinese warriors. The Zhua represented an entirely different philosophy of combat, not about cutting or piercing, but about control, disruption, and domination. It was physics weaponized, and it was absolutely terrifying to face. At number 2, we have what many military historians consider the most psychologically devastating weapon of the ancient and early medieval world, Greek fire, and the terrifying naval projector system the Byzantine Empire used to deploy it. Greek fire was an incendiary liquid weapon developed by the Byzantine Empire around the 7th century AD, and it burned on water. Not just in water, on water. The moment Greek fire contacted the surface of the sea, it ignited and kept burning, spreading across the waves, turning the water itself into a weapon. Enemy sailors, who jumped overboard to escape burning ships, found themselves in a burning ocean with nowhere to go. The Byzantine navy deployed Greek fire through bronze siphon projectors mounted on the prows of their warships, essentially the ancient world's first flamethrowers, capable of projecting a sustained stream of burning liquid dozens of feet across the water. The sound it made, according to contemporary accounts, was described as a continuous thunderous roar. The sight of it, a ship bearing down on you, breathing fire across the surface of the sea, was reportedly enough to cause mass desertion among enemy naval forces before a single engagement even began. Equipped with a formula so secret that the Byzantines executed anyone who attempted to sell or share it, Greek fire was the Byzantine Empire's ultimate strategic deterrent for nearly 4 centuries. It saved Constantinople from at least 2 massive Arab naval sieges that, by any conventional military calculus, should have succeeded. And here is the most extraordinary fact on this entire list. We still don't fully know what Greek fire was made of. The exact formula was so carefully guarded that it was lost to history entirely. We have educated theories, quicklime, naphtha, pine resin, but nobody alive today can say with certainty what compound allowed fire to burn on the surface of water and resist every attempt to extinguish it. History didn't just try to forget this weapon, it succeeded, and that makes it the second most terrifying entry on this list. And at number 1, the most legendary, most debated, and most breathtakingly audacious weapon in all of ancient history, the Archimedes Death Ray. Archimedes of Syracuse was the greatest scientific mind of the ancient world, mathematician, physicist, engineer. A man so far ahead of his time that even by modern standards his work is extraordinary. And according to ancient historical accounts, when the Roman general Marcellus laid siege to the city of Syracuse in 212 BC, Archimedes turned the very laws of physics into a weapon of mass destruction. The death ray, as it became known, was reportedly a system of large bronze mirrors, or polished shields, arranged on the walls and harbor of Syracuse in precise geometric formation. When aligned correctly under the Mediterranean sun, these mirrors focused and concentrated the sun's rays into a single, intensely powerful beam of heat, directed at the sails and wooden hulls of Roman warships in the harbor. According to ancient sources, ships began catching fire at distances that left the Roman crews completely bewildered and utterly helpless. There was no enemy they could fight. The sky itself seemed to be attacking them. Known for triggering a level of panic in Roman forces that even the great general Marcellus couldn't immediately explain or counter, the death ray caused significant delay in the siege of Syracuse and forced Rome to rethink its entire naval approach. How? Was it real? This is where history gets fascinating. Modern researchers, including a team at MIT and a separate Greek engineering group, have actually tested the concept using bronze mirrors and period-accurate materials. Both experiments demonstrated that concentrated solar energy from an array of mirrors absolutely can ignite wood at naval engagement distances, under the right conditions. Equipped with nothing but mathematics, mirrors, and the most brilliant scientific mind the ancient world had ever produced, Archimedes may have created humanity's first directed energy weapon 2,000 years before the concept would appear again in modern warfare. A key asset in one of history's most extraordinary defensive sieges, the Archimedes Death Ray earns its place at the very top of this list without question. Some weapons are deadly. This one was divine. There you have it, 10 ancient weapons so devastatingly effective, so far ahead of their time, and so ruthlessly engineered that history has spent centuries trying to process what their existence even means for our understanding. Ancestors. From Rome's genius-level javelin engineering to China's 15-second repeating crossbow, from Byzantine liquid fire that burned on water to Archimedes focusing the sun itself into a weapon, the ancient world was not primitive. It was inventive in ways that should genuinely humble us. The lesson of this list isn't just about weapons. It's about human ingenuity under the most extreme pressure imaginable, the pressure of survival, conquest, and the desperate,
relentless drive to find an edge over the enemy standing across the battlefield. That drive never disappeared. It just evolved. If you enjoyed this video, smash that like button. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Which ancient weapon do you think was the most terrifying? Share this with someone who thinks history is boring, and subscribe to the channel so you never miss our next deep dive into the weapons, warriors, and wars that shape the world we live in today. We'll see you in the next one.